I'm used to only really drafting with like high stakes players, right? I mean, y'all see us on the live streams every single day, drafting with sickos that are drafting fantasy football teams in May, June, July. But when you get to your fantasy football draft in 2023, not everybody is going to be as tuned in. Not everybody is going to be as informed. So what I want to do is I want to take the valuable information that we have from ADP on both Underdog Fantasy as well as the FFPC. That's where the most money is spent in fantasy football drafts every single year. And I want to compare that to casual ESPN redraft ADP and try to help you identify where the high stakes drafters are taking players that maybe the casual drafters are not. And maybe those guys represent strong values in that format. So the perfect example will be someone at the very top of draft boards in Nick Chubb. Like if we're going to go ahead and look at Nick Chubb with this ADP in these three formats, on ESPN, Nick Chubb is going to be the running back 7 off the board. In comparison, if you're looking at Underdog, Nick Chubb is the running back 4, and the FFPC, Nick Chubb's the running back 6. So you're seeing Nick Chubb go, about 6 picks ahead of Saquon Barkley in these Underdog drafts and about 6 to 7 picks behind Saquon Barkley in ESPN drafts. Now, if we try to figure out if we should be taking Nick Chubb in those casual redraft leagues at this ADP in the middle of the second round, I think it's a pretty easy decision to take Nick Chubb as the running back 7. I mean, if you look at the past 3 years, Nick Chubb on average has finished as the running back 8 from a fantasy points per game perspective. And his situation is dramatically better this next season than it's been in a long, long time. Not only are you going to get the best quarterback play Nick Chubb has ever seen in his NFL career with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. Yes, I understand Watson wasn't great last year, but you give him an entire offseason. I think Deshaun Watson's going to go back to his Houston Texans himself, and I think the Cleveland Browns would be much, much better. But at the same time, you remove Kareem Hunt from this offense. And we know the one thing that Nick Chubb has been disappointing with through his NFL career has been his receiving down usage, right? Like over the past 3 years, Nick Chubb's averaged almost a 6% team target share, which is not impressive. He hasn't even averaged 2 targets per game. I mean, it's pitiful. But if we go over the past 4 seasons and look at games with and without Kareem Hunt, and games with Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb has averaged 1.95 targets per game. However, in games without Kareem Hunt, that number is up at 2.93. So Nick Chubb is averaging a full extra target per game with no Kareem Hunt in this offense. Jerome Ford is not anything special. So it's really funny to see in these ESPN drafts, Nick Chubb going behind Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb going, 6 picks behind Derrick Henry, whereas you're not concerned with Nick Chubb's age like you would be with Derrick Henry's. Hell, he's going 8 picks actually behind Saquon Barkley, and it's just completely different in those high stakes formats. Now, going down to our next guy, going to be a little bit cheaper. Right now, J.K. Dobbins is the running back 24 in these ESPN drafts. If you're going to go ahead and look at where he's going in comparison to some of these other players, J.K. Dobbins right now is being drafted directly behind Trevor Lawrence. He's being drafted behind Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Pacheco, as well as Dallas Goedert in those ESPN drafts. But both on Underdog Fantasy as well as the FFPC, you're seeing J.K. Dobbins being drafted as the running back 18, going rounds earlier as a running back that high stakes players love. Now, if we're looking at Dobbins, this is a profile that's very difficult to know what we should expect, right? We've seen only 2 seasons for J.K. Dobbins in his NFL career where he's been the running back 33 and the running back 34 on a points per game basis. With J.K. Dobbins, the market share numbers look really bad, but that's just because Lamar Jackson is obviously such a force as a rusher himself. And also, those target share numbers are going to be extremely low when that rushing quarterback in Lamar Jackson is not really looking to dump the ball off. Now, if you're taking Dobbins, I think it's going to be completely fine if you're drafting him as like a mid to low end running back 2. In Underdog drafts, I don't love his cost, but in your casual redraft leagues, I think it's going to be completely fine. Like if you go over and look at right now where Underdog has the J.K. Dobbins player props for this next season, they have J.K. Dobbins at about 6.5 rushing touchdowns and 875.5 rushing yards. Now, keep in mind, this is close to someone that they have like Ramondre Stevenson, where Ramondre Stevenson's at 925.5 rushing yards. But the major difference between these two backs is you shouldn't really expect J.K. Dobbins to have that large of a role as a pass catcher. Now, of course, real quick, if you want to check out any of those player props on Underdog Fantasy, or if you want to go get in some serious fantasy football drafts, which we are doing every single day. I mean, y'all know we're going to be live streaming those drafts every single day until 2024. You can find that link in the comment section in the description of this video. If you sign up to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, as well as a free trial to flockfantasy.com. And now is the perfect time to go check out Underdog because they have the puppy contest open, which is a $5 buy-in, $500,000 prize pool. It's best balls to no time committed all during the year. Side drafted 700 teams, won $150,000 on Underdog last year. And also, they just put up a special Patrick Mahomes player prop, more than less than half a passing yard. That will expire, though, on July 21st. So please make sure you go take advantage of it right now. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to be looking at Cam Akers. In casual ESPN drafts, he's being drafted as a running back 3. He's actually the running back 27 off the board, going directly behind DeAndre Swift, going directly behind Dalvin Cook. Hell, in these casual redraft leagues, going behind the freaking 49ers defense. Whereas if you're looking at these high stakes drafts, you're seeing him on Underdog running back 21, FFPC running back 21. Now, with Akers, very similar to J.K. Dobbins, obviously, it's a running back that had a serious injury going into year 2. So it's very difficult to sit here and know exactly what we have with Akers. I mean, he's been the running back 50 from a points per game basis. He's been the running back 39 from a points per game basis. But what a lot of people like to do, and what is definitely valid to look at with Cam Akers, is the final season stretch he had this past year. You can say the same thing in 2021, and you can say the same thing in 2020. What's really funny is every single season with Cam Akers, you've seen the man finish strong. You've seen the man going out there and handling a 20-plus touch workload every single week. Like in 2022, this is a running back that over the final 3 weeks had over 100 rushing yards each and every game. He averaged over 20 carries per game. And hell, if y'all remember against the Denver Broncos when the Rams put up 51 points. Yeah, Cam Akers won you your week. Now, going over to 2021, Cam Akers in the playoffs didn't score a lot of points, but you have to remember the man just had a ridiculous amount of volume. He was inefficient with that volume because he was coming off the torn Achilles, but still 17 carries, 24 carries, 13 and 13. Going to 2020, he finished off his rookie season on a tear. Is why, if you remember, going into year 2 before he tore his Achilles, he was going at the 1-2 turn of fantasy football drafts. There, 21 carries, 29, 15, 21, 28, 18. So Akers has definitely flashed the ability to be a 3-down back. It more so comes down to, are you a believer in the Los Angeles Rams offense? And do you think that Akers is fully recovered from that torn Achilles? Now, going over to our next back, kind of a quote-unquote boring option, right? But he's running behind an elite offensive line. You have David Montgomery. David Montgomery in these ESPN drafts is the running back 29 off the board. And in comparison, Underdog, he's the running back 24. FFPC is the running back 25. Now with Montgomery, it's been a straight decline over the past 3 years, right? If you're looking at his total yards per game, going down from 100 to 88 to 67. If you're looking at his carries per game, going from 16.5 to 17 to 12. If you're looking at his fantasy football finish, going from 8 to 15 to 28 on a per game basis. But what David Montgomery has working in his favor is David Montgomery, similar to Miles Sanders, is really the only running back this offseason that signed a favorable contract, right? Like David Montgomery signed a deal where he's linked for 4 years and getting a total of almost $9 million guaranteed at signing. Now he's going to a team that let Jamal Williams just be a running back 1 in fantasy based off rushing touchdowns. And with Montgomery, I think you can assume that, at least in the short term, this will be a running back that has the red zone role in Detroit. And what I may even do with Montgomery is target him in non-PPR formats, especially if you know your league's going to be one where you can make a lot of trades during the season. Because it wouldn't surprise me if Montgomery ended up being the strong running back 1 for the Detroit Lions at the beginning portion of the year, even if Jahmyr Gibbs increased his role as the season progressed. Now, going over to our next guy, someone that we talked about in our must draft running backs video, we have Javonte Williams. I mean, in these ESPN casual redraft leagues, he's the running back 32 on Underdog and FFPC. He's the running back 29 in both of those formats. With Javonte, I want to put a massive asterisk here because I will say, I do think in your traditional shallow redraft league where you're going to have a bunch of solid waiver wire options, that Javonte Williams should be going a little bit lower given the chance that he's just a straight up roster clogger on your team and doesn't allow you to work the waiver wire as Javonte Williams is injured at the beginning part of the year. But the reason I want to have an asterisk on here is if you end up getting Javonte Williams on the PUP, or if you are able to put injured guys in your IR slots at the beginning portion of the year, then at that point, I think Javonte is a fine pick at this price range. That way, you're not having to roster him on your bench, prohibiting you from going through and making moves on the waiver wire. And instead, if he's actually down there on your IR, you're going to have so much flexibility with the running back that has a lot of upside later in the season. Now, going over to our next guy, Antonio Gibson is literally free in these casual redraft leagues. Running back 38 on ESPN, running back 32 on Underdog, running back 33 in the FFPC. So running back that has finished higher than the running back 32, 33, 38 every single year. He's actually averaged the running back 22 finish over the past 3 seasons. And keep in mind, with Antonio Gibson, so running back that was a wide receiver in college. You would assume that with Gibson, this is a running back that it would have taken some time for him to develop, and maybe he wouldn't break out until later on in his career. And it looks like that may be happening because what we've seen over the past 3 years is the continued trend in Antonio Gibson seeing more and more involvement as a receiver. He goes from an 8% team target share to a 10% to almost a 12% this past season. And this trend should continue going into this next year. If you look at the departure of J.D. McKissic, and if you look at the splits of Gibson with and without J.D. McKissic this past year. With J.D. McKissic in the lineup this past season, Antonio Gibson actually only averaged 3.3 targets per game and 8.7 fantasy points per game. But without J.D. McKissic in the lineup this year, you actually had Antonio Gibson at 4.5 targets per game and up there at 13 fantasy points per game. So yeah, I would say if you're getting Gibson as a running back 4, it's a pick that doesn't have a lot of downside and has a ton of upside. Now, going over to Zach Charbonnet, I think it's kind of a similar boat, right? Zach Charbonnet in these ESPN drafts, the running back 41 off the board. So he's your running back 4. I mean, he's literally just someone you're stashing on your bench for upside. In Underdog drafts, he's the running back 33. And in FFPC drafts, he's the running back 35. Now, with Zach Charbonnet, obviously, we can't see what he's done in the NFL so far. All we can do is look at his college prospect profile coming into the year. It's a running back that checked pretty much every single box you would look for from a running back prospect. He had the size to be a 3-down option. That's why you see him have a 3-down workload at UCLA. He was a phenomenal receiving down back his final season at UCLA. And the Seattle Seahawks make a significant investment, taking him in the 2nd round of the NFL draft this year, indicating that he should have a role this next season. Now, I kind of expect this to be a similar situation to what you had with like Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman back in the day, or maybe a more recent example would be like in Aaron Jones as well as AJ Dillon. And that was Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, Kenneth Walker's the running back 1, right? Like Kenneth Walker's going to be the guy you're excited to start each and every week. Zach Charbonnet more so is just going to be a running back that has a large enough workload where you can mix him in if you're desperate and you really need to. But if you're getting him as your running back 4 and all of a sudden Kenneth Walker were to go down, he is a running back that has asymmetrical upside to actually be a running back 1 in fantasy if something were to occur to his situation. I mean, if we're going to go through and look at his prospect profile and how he scored in our running back model, he comps to some massive hits, right? He's next to David Johnson, next to Kareem Hunt, next to Josh Jacobs, even Melvin Gordon. But at the same time, he is next to some pretty big bust. I mean, Bishop Sankey was here, Amir Abdullah was here, Kerryon Johnson, Darrell Henderson, Darius Geis, and Keyshawn Vaughn. So by no means is Zach Charbonnet a guarantee like you would see with Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs, but still a great running back prospect nonetheless. Now, I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you play fantasy football and want to get into a draft with us, today on the live stream, tomorrow on the live stream, the next day, we'll do it every single day until 2024. Or if you want to go just hop in one of those massive Underdog tournaments, I would recommend that $5 puppy draft for $75,000 to first place, which a member of the flock won last year. You can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the comment section and the description. Use promo code FLOCK for a 100% deposit match, plus my 2023 fantasy football rankings, and a free trial to flockfantasy.com. Available in damn near every state. And please, everybody, I know 99% of y'all are already on Underdog. Go take advantage of the free Patrick Mahomes bet ASAP while you still can. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later today.